All right. Hi, my name is Kelly Basioli. Welcome to our parent presentation for fall 2022. We are super excited to be here with you. I'm going to have my colleague Ryan introduce himself, and then I'll do another introduction and get us going with our presentation.
Is it on the TV?
Hi, everyone. This is Ryan. I'm the program coordinator at Stone Canyon. I work mostly with our high school leaders who will be talking about a little bit that we use to bring in to help volunteer with us. And then also with some other program logistics as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Again, my name is Kelly Basioli. This is I'm going on my third season, or my second full year with Stone Canyon. My background in outdoor education has taken me different places, and it's been a lot of expedition-based outdoor education. So going on trips, backpacking, canoeing, rock climbing. But I started working with 5th and 6th graders a while back, and been excited to come back to what I feel like is my roots in working with outdoor ed. I'm just going to take a moment here to ask people to mute themselves if they haven't already. All right. Let's see, so I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here. So Stone Canyon Outdoor Adventures, we transform how students experience. What is experiential education, and what does it mean to transform how students experience? I like to think of all of us as experientially getting educated by life. And experiential education is a way of being immersed in what it is you're learning, and being able to put things to the test, to learn something and then to go try it out, or to experiment with it, to play around with it. It also looks a little bit like learning from your peers, learning in a different environment, not just outdoors, but in general with the surroundings around you. So with experiential education, we work with smaller groups. We step outside the classroom most of the time. We step away from books, from screens, and we do a lot of doing, a lot of learning through doing. And so in general, we're trying to tap into different learning styles, but we're also just trying to see what we can see and be curious about the things around us and learning as we go. Stone Canyon has been a part of the Douglas County School District for 10 years. We are on our 10th year, and we have a lot of our schools come from Douglas County, and we have some that spread out and are from Cherry Creek. And in general, our programs are based on working with 5th and 6th grade students. And those are usually 3-day and 2-night programs. Before I go further, I just wanted to highlight our social media up here, as well as our main phone line. And we'll bring it back to a few other tidbits of information on contacts and who to be in touch with. So our 3-day, 2-night experience, as I mentioned, is our typical program. It includes all meals and afternoon snacks. Students will usually come to us on a Monday and leave on a Wednesday, or come on a Wednesday and leave on a Friday. We have a few groups that don't fall into that category, but for the most part, it's 3 days and 2 nights. We offer 7-day activities, so 7 activities that are 90 minutes long, and 2 activities in the evening, and those are 75 minutes long. And we'll jump into some information about what those different activities look like, what kind of classes we do at Outdoor Ed. And also we have a registered nurse on site 24 hours a day. They are there. So we call on them for anything that's needed, from the big stuff to the teeny tiny stuff. They're available, and often they're out with our classes and our activities. And they get to know the students throughout the time they're there as well. So what are the goals of outdoor education, and what is Stone Canyon all about? I think the first one that's really important to share is that physical and emotional safety is our number one goal, and it's also a backstop. So paying attention and making sure students have what they need physically. So in the warmer months, sunscreen, sun hat, sunglasses, and colder weather, bringing in more layers, gloves, those kinds of things, but also making sure they have what they need in terms of nutrition, in terms of rest, in terms of shelter. We'll talk a little bit about the safety components as we go and some of the practices that we use. And our other number one goal is emotional safety. So making sure that students feel included, that they feel heard, they feel validated. There's a place for everyone at outdoor ed. And these physical and emotional safety are the baseline, fundamental. So they're goals, but they're also requirements for us. With that, social and emotional growth. So the students get to be a part of several different groups while they're at outdoor ed. They get to be in an activity group, which they move through 7 different activities during that time. And that's usually about 12 to 15 students. So they get to know those students. Maybe they know them from school already, and maybe they are brand new to each other, particularly this time of year. They also get to be at a set table for every meal. So they get to know those kids at their table group. And then they also are in a bunk room that might not include either of those groups, a bunk room that they come back to in the evenings and into the morning. And with that, they're learning a little bit about each other, but they're also learning how to interact and keep changing in different groups and getting to know different kiddos. Experienced instruction based on how people learn. So we'll talk a little more about our instructors further on in the presentation, but they are quite adept at adapting to students and trying to adjust what they can to meet different learning needs, to work with shorter attention spans, to help kids get engaged by participation, by being curious, really having a moment to ask questions and have the students ask questions and get to explore a little bit. We really like to engage as many different learning styles and ways of interacting as possible. Another goal is appreciation and respect for the natural environment, and that's by directly engaging with nature. So a few of our classes start inside, but they make their way outside, and most of our activities are outside. So we're in and out of different parts of our property and nature throughout the entire day. So the kids can see what it looks like in the morning with the sunrise, or what it looks like in the middle of the day or the sunset. They often have interactions with different wildlife we have on site, everything from really cool lizards and bugs, macroinvertebrates, to potentially a bear, a snake, turkeys. We have deer out the wazoo at different times, and they're young. So yeah, really getting to interact with the environment and somewhat be a part of it for these 3 days, to be much closer to it. Another goal is knowledge of sustainability concepts. So helping students learn and have more awareness about the environment and about what does it look like to be sustainable? What does that look like in their household, in their community, in their larger region or state? And just thinking of how they have an impact, or how different things around them impact them. And then obviously new friendships. So really excited for kids to get to know different kids and to get to learn different things and hopefully make new friends as they go. All right, Ryan, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to be talking through a few of our different activities that we offer. We have them broken down into a few different categories. I used to be an instructor and teach all these classes, so I love talking about all of them. And so we're starting off with science. Science, we have a lot of like hands-on activities built in to each of these. There's some indoor components, but then we get outside and come back in, go back outside again. Usually a lot of group work as well, so we can actually put things together and build things a lot of times. And so the first one on this list is aerodynamics. we start off inside. We start learning about the engineering design process. We build smaller version of rockets, and then we build larger bottle rockets, and we go and shoot off outside. Just a super fun class, a lot of group work involved in like deciding how we're going to build this, designing, redesigning, and coming up like, oh, that didn't work on the last thing. Let's see if it'll work on this one. And then we have Animal Survivor. We go outside, we learn about food webs, and we learn about food chains. We learn about how different animals are interacting with each other, and even a little bit of how we interact with animals as well. And then what tools they use to survive out there. It's just a super fun, lots of fun games that build up to get a lot of really cool resources or ideas across. Then we have fire ecology. Fire ecology is just super fun. We get to talk about difference between like wildfire versus forest fires and how they work in different forests and different ecosystems. We even go outside, we look at just the area around camp and how different areas might burn differently and why we might need certain fire mitigation done in these areas. And then we do a little experiment at the end that kind of shows how different terrain or even how wind might affect these different things and why they're important. Then we have forest ecology. Forest ecology is awesome. It's pretty laid back. We just kind of go out and we walk around site and then we see what we see. And I think that's the most of that's the gist, right? That is getting our eyes off the ground where our feet are going, looking where our next step falls. That's where our brains are always doing. Our eyes are constantly looking down. You might be looking forward, but we're constantly flicking down to see where that next step is. And we miss so much around us. We might miss the yucca and out there. We might miss the ponderosa pine and the difference between that and the Douglas fir or the blue spruce. And we start to notice these things and see stuff that maybe we've been here for a couple days and we walked past this tree the whole time and we didn't even know that the bark on it smelled like butterscotch. And so we'll be bouncing around and just learning a lot about the stuff that's right next to us that we pass every day. Then we got freshwater biology. And over at Freshwater Bio, we get to look at our beautiful, amazing Plum Creek when it's flowing. Sometimes it doesn't flow. Sometimes it's frozen. But when we have the opportunity to run this activity and we do, it's just so much fun. We get to look and see, is this creek healthy? Not if it's safe to drink, but is it healthy? And we'll determine that through a few different things. We'll go make some observations. We'll then go and test the water. Look at maybe some pH, dissolved oxygen, a little bit of turbidity. And then we'll go after that. We'll go back and look for macroinvertebrates and look for that life that's happening under these rocks. And those little guys are going to tell us, is it healthy? Because they're not going to survive in highly polluted areas. And so it's really cool to be able to like look at different levels and just connect with this creek and then also find out if it's healthy for us. All right, so that's science. All right, and then we're moving on to outdoor education, right? I thought this whole trip was outdoor ed, but these are those activities that are the ones when you think of outdoor education, these are probably the ones that pop into your mind, right? We got archery. Look at all these kids having a blast getting to shoot archery. And not only that, it's just such an empowering class too. Maybe it's something they've never done. Maybe they tried it once at a birth party. And now they get to come here, they get to put and learn a new skill. They get to shoot these bows. And it's just so much fun. And then I'm gonna skip, or we'll do this one. Art and nature. Maybe we didn't think of that one, but it's a super classic one at art and nature. And this class is built around or kind of designed after Andy Goldsworthy, who is this guy that goes out into the environment and these different places. He might be there a week, he might be there 2 months, and sometimes he'll sit there for a few days and just like, what will fit here? And then he only uses natural things around him. He won't even use hammers and tools to dislodge the rocks. He finds other ways to get these things out that might be frozen into the ground, and then builds these structures that fit in the environment that they're already in. So we made a class about that. So we talk a little about art, and then we build our own installations out in the wild. Then we have orienteering. We get to learn about maps and compasses. Super fun. We get to learn how to navigate. We get to learn why you need both, not just one or the other. And so that is an awesome class as well. Then outdoor skills. This is a classic. We're going to learn about L&T. We're going to learn about the 10 essentials. And then at the end, we're going to learn how to build some really cool shelters or forts, right? We get to build awesome structures out of sticks. I think all classes should include this, but amazing class, super fun. All right. And then we have our leadership section. And I like to say that all of our classes are technically team building, just hidden behind other things, because they all have to work together in different groups and be successful. And then we get to debrief those things throughout, no matter what class we're doing. But these classes here hone in on those leadership skills. Balloon rescue is egg drop with water balloons. But then we also have different layers. We have them get into a team and define the roles in that team. That might be the manager, the builder, the engineer, and then the most important of all, the marketer. Because you might have the coolest thing ever, the greatest invention ever, but if you don't market it, no one's going to buy it. And so we get some really cool commercials we make, but just this whole holistic idea behind building this and having to work together to put all this together. Because the manager decides, oh, this is where the money goes. And then the builder decides, hey, engineer, you came up with some really cool plans, but man, those are not going to work. You drew something that doesn't exist. And so they have to go back and forth and figure it out. Then we have high ropes. And I'm going to hit this and zip line together because they're part of our challenge course activities. Typically, a school will do one or the other, and then but they all kind of fall on the same thing. We start out telling them it's challenge by choice, meaning they get to choose their challenge, well, however far or whatever that might mean. They get to find their own success point on this. For high ropes, they get to decide, like, do I want to go all the way up the element, walk across this tightrope that we see our friend walking across, and going across, coming back and getting lower down, or they just want to put on a harness and take a cool picture and take it off, or support their friend, or climb up halfway up that pole and come on back down because they're like, oh man, I have conquered my fear of heights. This is as far as I'm going to push myself today. Next time I'll go further. And that's the success point that they chose for themselves. And we let them know that that's their choice and no one else's, to give them that power in that moment. Same thing with zip line, except pretty much once you step off the platform, that's kind of the choice is made. You're going to go down to the bottom. We're going to take you on off. But up to that last moment, they have that challenge. They get that choice of whether or not they want us to do it or still. And then team building, this is the one we take away all the other stuff. And it's a bunch of games. We play them. They're super fun. We're trying to challenge them. We're trying to push them just a little bit. So they have to talk and they have to discuss, come up with plans. But then sometimes they don't win the game, or sometimes a lot of things arise. And that's what we're trying to go for. And we want to talk about those things. We want to figure out, why did this not work? How can we communicate better? What does good communication look like? Because at the end of the day, team building is a lot of silly games, but and all of these things we do are until we debrief it. And the debrief is where all the magic happens. And that's where we make all these great growth, or where the most growth opportunity is in that debrief, and what makes it team building. All right. And then we have our evening programs. A typical 3-day, 2-night program. Most schools will pick 2 out of these 3. We have, first off, we have nature at night. Sometimes this gets called a night hike. or maybe it used to be called this, or that's how it gets described. But it's not much of a hike. It's really just walking to a location on site they've probably already been to or seen, and playing a lot of games. And these games could be, and the whole idea behind the games is to learn how other animals, our nocturnal animals, our crepuscular animals, how they navigate their world, because sight becomes less of an important thing as the lights go down. And so maybe it's different hearing games, different smell, and a few other things along those lines. It's just a super cool activity. Then barn dance. Barn dance is basically a middle school dance that happens in a barn to a lot of fun music. We've actually been working on a playlist today, trying to add some different songs to really keep it going. Usually it's a lot of energy. Last night's barn dance was so much fun. I came in for a few minutes, and my high school leads were doing a fashion show with their fun costumes they pulled out of our team building area, and the kids just went crazy for it. And it was just so much fun. But like every barn dance is so different, but it's always just a lot of energy. But at the end of the day, also with that is that we're not going to force anyone to dance. Maybe they want to play games in the little game corner, some cards, some Jenga, or maybe they just want to sit and talk to their friend that time. And that's totally cool. We're not going to force anyone to do something they don't want to in that moment, as long as we're always having fun. And then campfire. I feel like without campfire, it can even call it an outdoor ed trip, right? And that's where we have all of their skits. We bring in more repeat after me songs. We play some different games that are campfire specific, and then we have the ooey gooey s'mores. Don't worry, we're not going to give sharp sticks to kids, especially when there's like 40 to 100 of them out there. We're going to bake them in the oven, but we're still going to have some amazing s'mores to go with our campfire. And it's going to be a great old time.
Thanks, Ryan. I always feel like I want to go and follow Ryan around in classes when he talks about these classes. All right, so talking about our staff, I will shamelessly say that they are some of the best parts of Stone Canyon and have so much to offer the kiddos. Most of them have bachelor's degrees, some of them master's degrees. They come with first aid and CPR certification, and often some of them have a more advanced certification in wilderness medicine as wilderness first responders. We've had a few that have been EMTs that have worked with us. They provide most of the supervision and facilitation at Stone Canyon. So in general, every time a group is out, there is an instructor with them. There's a few times in the day, the teacher time after lunch for about 30 minutes, and then again after dinner for about an hour when the students are with their teachers. And other than that, they get to hang with our wonderful instructors. Instructors do participate in 2 weeks of training prior to starting at Stone Canyon, and many of them have several seasons, if not several years of experience with outdoor education. They are all background checked through the Douglas County Sheriff's Department, and they get trained with all of the various lockdown procedures, tornado drill, fire drill, all of those things. And in general, a student is never really left alone with like anywhere on camp by themselves. For the most part, they're with an instructor in their group, or they're with an instructor and one other student, or they're with an admin person if they need to get transported or move or something like that. That's very rare. They might be with the nurse, and they might also be with their teachers, but for the most part, they hang with instructors and they're with their group. I also mentioned earlier that we have a registered nurse on site 24 hours. And they are tuned into the different needs of the students, whether it's giving them night meds or morning meds or meal time meds. And our instructors carry radios with them everywhere, so we can be in communication, as well as they can also reach out to the nurse at any time if they need to. And you can see our four-wheel gator there in the background. That's the one thing that we drive around. And so your student, if potential need for seeing a nurse sooner than later, might get a ride in that gator. And other than that, we're walking everywhere on foot at camp. All right. So just to talk a little bit about meals and the dining experience, I know this is a big topic of curiosity and also questions. This is a picture of our new dining hall. It started being in construction last summer and finally finished the beginning of February this year. We have thoroughly enjoyed putting it to use this spring and into the summer. Has greater occupancy than before. It's beautiful commercial grade kitchen. We've gone back to family style seating, which is really fun. The kids, like I mentioned before, stay with the same table group. And so we have what's called hoppers. And for that meal, that one person that's called a hopper will get to go in and help bring the big plate of chicken tenders and the big platter maybe of mashed potatoes and the bowl of maybe orange slices back to the table. And then it's like family style. So the kids all get to serve themselves off those platters. And then if they need seconds or anything that is additional, then their hopper gets to get up and get it for them. Part of that's a little dining hall management with keeping people from getting up all the time. But it's also to help bring in a little bit of accountability in our meals and give a student a chance to step into a role of service. And it's a pretty important role to be the one person that can go up and get the whole plate of ice cream that's bringing back to the table. We are a nut aware facility, which is a little different than nut free. Basically, we don't have any kind of tree nuts or peanuts on our property for consumption of students. And so it's important to know that if a student is super highly allergic to anything in the vicinity of nuts, we don't go through and have the facilities and such that they're 100%, like nothing that's ever touched nuts is in our facility, but in general, we don't have nuts there. We like to make jokes that sometimes it's the staff that are nuts and sometimes it's the kiddos, sometimes it's me, but in general, we're nut aware facility. We also ask that any kind of outside candy or treats get turned in during our orientation, and that's within the first hour or two of students getting to camp. That's one to make sure we don't have random food or candy or things out and about with our students at camp, both for critters, but also just to be aware of, are they eating at meals? Do they have what they need? And being able to make sure that we've got a plan or a system in place to make sure they are nourished. For any dietary needs, you can see here at the bottom of the screen, Kim Wolfram is our head chef, and she's the person to call or email with any major concerns that you have. For the most part, she can accommodate dairy-free or gluten-free, obviously any kind of consideration of not eating meat, anything that's maybe several different allergies or dietary restrictions like layered. It'd be worth reaching out to her so that she knows and that she can plan in advance as much as possible. On occasion, she might ask a family to supplement a little bit of food or snacks if it's quite a few dietary restrictions, but she does an amazing job of trying to accommodate everyone at camp and is really happy to try and work with you. And you'll see this, you'll see her email address again on our last slide. So just a heads up for her though.
Yeah, I can talk about cabins, right?
Awesome, thanks.
All right. So these are, we'll talk about cabins a little bit over in the pictures. You can see the outsides of two different ones. That more yellow looking ones are timberline cabin. We have a bunch of bunks inside that cabin that all have tree names. That's why it's called timberline. And then we have falcon cabin. And falcon cabin is that more log looking building. And all the bunks in there are like birds of prey. So like prairie hawk, prairie falcons and peregrines and stuff like that. Merlins is a fun one. And so those are our two cabins, and then there's multiple bunk rooms inside those cabins. These two cabins are separated by gender, wherever that student is going to feel the most comfortable, and we'll make those different groups. And then with those bunk groups that are inside of those cabins, those are chosen by the teachers. The teachers, we release on our online system which bunk rooms are open and how many spots, and then they'll go ahead and fill those in for us. And so that's how those kids get paired and whatnot through that system. These cabins, they have electricity, heat, indoor plumbing, and private bathrooms and showers. And so all of our bathrooms closed doors and only one student in there at a time. And then the rest of our overall bunk rooms inside the cabin don't have closed doors, so we can have good supervision throughout. Inside of each bunk, there are 8 to 16 students, depending on the size of the bunk room and how many bunk beds are in there. And then we also have 1 to 2 high school volunteers in there. And that's, we'll be talking more about them and their role, but we'll have 1 to 2 of them in there. And they sleep in the bunk room that the children are in. And we also have our staff and or chaperone situation, depending on what we need. And they will also be in there to support those high school leads overall in the cabin. So they'll be floating between the bunk rooms. And then they have a separate room that they'll be sleeping in. Cool.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm going to jump into our medical policies and protocol here. This is also another hot topic, just to make sure that people are clear on what's required for your student to be able to have meds administered to them and what they can actually bring to camp. So what we have at camp is Tylenol and Benadryl. Those are our stock medicines at camp. And these do not need a doctor's sign off. They just need you to check a box when you register your student saying, I'm okay with the nurse administering either Tylenol or Benadryl to my student as needed. Anything else, any kind of vitamins, supplements, ointments, any other over-the-counter meds, including things like melatonin gummies or Claritin, all of those things need a doctor's form filled out. So medical provider signing off. And then those things also need to come in the original packaging and labeled. So anytime we get a student that comes with like a little Ziploc bag with 4 different gummies in there and 6 different white tablets or something, the nurse has to call the parents and say, what is this? And they have to fax over or scan in a medical provider form. So please send it in the original packaging with the student's name on it, make sure it's labeled. And then obviously if it's a prescription medication, it also has to be the correct dosage in the container, as well as have the student's name on it and have the right amount for the trip, the number of days and times that they'll take that medicine. We have a couple of items that students are allowed to self-carry, and usually this matches up if they're also carrying it at school and you would like for them to be able to carry it at camp. That's fine. Again, there has to be a permission to carry form that's filled out, and this is really just for epinephrine, like an EpiPen, or an inhaler like albuterol. And those forms you can find on our website, and or the teacher from your school can send those out to you. Homeopathic meds may not be administered at camp. And then there's an exception for hemp, which must be accompanied by a provider medical form and signed off by the parent or guardian. All right. All right, you want to talk about our high school lead volunteers, Ryan?
All right, so I get to finally talk about these amazing, wonderful, mysterious high schoolers we've been alluding to throughout. Whilst I love the staff, I used to be an instructor. Maybe I'm a little biased, but maybe I kind of think the high school leads might be the best part of the program. But I get to work with them. That's a large part of my job now. And these high school leaders are 10th graders or above that we're bringing in. And they have to apply into this program. And we get hundreds and hundreds of applicants. I think had about 400 applicants for this fall season. And then I go through all those applications and pick the best out of there. And then I bring them in. They go through a training with me. Before arriving. We also do an orientation the morning of before our students arrive for that program. And I bring in high school leaders per program. And so if there's 2 programs running that week, Monday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Friday, we'll have 2 different sets of high school leaders coming in for that. The role of a high school leader is different because there's across depending on what part of the program they're working in at the time. So when we're in activity groups, the instructors, as Kelly said, are leading them across site. That's who directing where we're going. They're doing all the teaching, all the instructing. The high school leaders are help facilitating that learning environment. They are redirecting behavior. So the instructor doesn't have to stop and tell someone, hey, let's not talk right now because no one can hear. And that because then if the instructor is constantly doing that, well, then we have 2 minutes to build those amazing shelters and outdoor skills we were talking about instead of 20. And so they're there to help redirect, and then they help emphasize the expectations set by the instructors. Maybe, hey, don't throw the stick. Remember, we're going to let it down, set it down, right? We don't want that stick to go flying through and hit someone in the eye, especially because they're in groups of 10 to 15. Our awareness of someone walking by isn't good. So we want to make sure we set those expectations, and they're going to help facilitate and make sure your students be cared for and like socially, emotionally, and physically in those times. And then when we go into our meals, our high school leaders are the ones sitting at the tables with the kids, kind of helping those conversations. Like, what were we doing today? Like, oh, archery, who shot archery so far? Oh, hey, we have this box, we have some jokes in here, let's talk about this. And making sure those conversations are still being appropriate while at camp at the meal. Making sure that those students are eating. So if one of our friends is like, oh man, like they just do not like mac and cheese. Well, they're gonna go let our instructor know. And then we're gonna get them some food that they will eat and want to eat. So we have the calories need for the day. And then when we go back to our cabins, where we talked about earlier, they're the ones in the bunk rooms with those kids, once again, monitoring for appropriate conversations and stuff. They're the ones engaging them, doing debriefs for the day. Maybe they're asking them their rosebud and thorn, what was good, what was bad? What are you looking to improve tomorrow? They're the ones that's reading that bedtime story, potentially, after lights out to help us go to sleep. And they're the ones also running those showers and making sure everyone's getting showered on their next shower, right? And making sure all that's organized. While our instructors or those staff people and chaperones are the ones supporting them and have that bigger vision for the whole cabin. They get the focus in and create an amazing experience in each bunk room. But yeah, and then at the end of their trip, we say bye to our kids. I say bye to the volunteers, and they get to receive feedback from me and from our program instructors. I'll send it to them. That way that they get to grow. So we get a lot of returners. So like this program is running right now, 7 out of 8 of them have all been here before. They love coming back and love pouring in and giving their energy to these kids. And that's why they're here. And they get their volunteer hours that they need for school. I mean, they get double what they need in one trip with 42 hours plus training. But a lot of them keep coming back because they really love what's happening here. And they get that feedback to grow. So it's an actual leadership program for them as well. So that's our high school lead volunteers.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, frequently asked questions. We'll see how many of these hopefully match up with questions you all asked as well. First off, we mentioned already what supervision looks like. So just to reemphasize, students are with either instructors at all times, their teachers at all times, or perhaps a combination of an admin staff or a high school lead and an admin staff. In general, our ratio is about 1 to 12. And sometimes that drops down to below that because we can also have admin help out if needed. And then, as we mentioned, our group size gets up to 15. But again, sometimes you have admin in that scene as well. Safety precautions and procedures that we utilize, but the first is that we have a locked gate. No one comes in through our property without having to get buzzed through the gate. And so if we're not expecting them, we don't know who they are, what they need, there's a conversation that happens. So we don't have anyone that randomly wanders onto our property. And in the case that people are coming to do some kind of maintenance or construction or something like that, they're usually they're district employees, because we are often working with O&M for any of those needs on our property. In the case of emergency, so 911 would be called. In addition to that, district security would be called. So we carry one of the big radios that reaches lots, like very far, hundreds of miles, and can reach out to district security at any time if we need to. Additionally, with the safety precautions, we do follow, as I mentioned before, any necessary fire drills, tornado drills, the lockdown procedures. Our staff are trained also in what happens if there's a lost camper. The fire department is just down the road in Larkspur. And as I mentioned before, we just can press a button and district security knows that something is happening at Stone Canyon. We also follow several things like a lightning protocol. So when we find that lightning is within 10 miles of our camp, we have protocol where students and staff are moving to a place that is safer. And then additionally, we follow that with other needs with weather, depending on what the weather looks like. We do a lot outside, but if we need to move inside or change things up, we're able to do that. We didn't really talk about our 3 R's or our 3 strike system. And so the 3 R's are respect for self, which includes hydrating, includes wearing what you need to wear for the elements. It includes trying to get some good sleep so you have energy, eating at meals so that you've got energy as well. Respect for others, so treating others as they would like to be treated. And that includes students, that includes other staff, teachers, high school lead volunteers. And then our third respect is for the environment. And that can include the space, the land, the animals around us. It also can include the property, the buildings we're in or the gear that we use. So if any point in time a student is not respecting one of those things, they can get a strike. And the first strike is, it's a serious warning. We talked to the student about what was happening with their behavior, which respect were they not following, what needs to change, and make a plan for that behavior to shift and change in the future. If something happens again and there's a second strike given, then it's much more serious. We reach out to the families or guardians, and we bring the teachers into it if they haven't already been talked to, and go back through the same process of what needs to be followed, what changes need to happen for that student to basically be able to stay and continue to participate in Stone Canyon. We don't often get to a third strike, but if we do, it means that outdoor ed is not the place for that person at that time. And so we send them home. So in general, we try a lot to really engage students. We get a lot of information in advance about different things that maybe students are dealing with, or maybe if it's several students, like a little bit of drama in the class, those kinds of things. And we do our best to really work with those students and adjust where we can adjust. And then in the end, we also have our 3 strike system if it's needed. What sets Stone Canyon apart from similar programs? So first off, we only have one school on our property at a time. There's not an overlap where 2 different schools are sharing the facility and trying to vie for the resources or the staff. When the school comes, they have like our sole attention. They're there for those 3 days. There's an hour or 2 of overlap when the buses come in to pick up those students and new buses come with other students. But that time, students don't actually overlap with each other. They just happen to be on property at the same time for about an hour or so. We also match up our science curriculum with the state of Colorado science standards. So it can really emphasize what kids are learning in their 5th and 6th grade classes for science, and be some overlap both when they get back to school and or prepare them and have a cool opportunity to have reminders and refreshing when they come to Stone Canyon. We also are more education based than some other outdoor ed programs. And what that usually translates to is a few less rolled ankles or injuries. All right. Ryan, you want to jump in with homesickness?
So yeah, how is homesickness handled? Differently every time is the easy answer. Because every homesick kid is different. I love talking to homesick kids because usually we fit to find out why they miss home. The reason they're homesick is because they have amazing homes that they're going back to on Wednesday or Friday. They miss their amazing parents. Maybe they miss their very fluffy dog. And then those conversations sometimes are 5 minutes or an hour, just depending on that student. And it's handled with a lot of care and very personalized to that student and what they need. Because we want them to be successful at camp, and the goal is to keep them at camp. And we want them to have this experience, maybe it's their first night away from home, and so to help them and support them to have that experience away from home to help them further on, and to try to give them the tools to do that. And a lot of times we'll also reach out to those students teachers, and we'll see like, hey, like what are some do you have any ideas for this particular student? And then occasionally, in some of the bigger needs, especially if it presents itself early in the trip, we might reach out to the parents, and in order to get some tips, like what are some things that might be helpful to help this student. Things we don't typically do is let that student call home, because one of two things happens. It either there's your crying child, is on the other end of this phone, and parental instincts kick in, and you're like, I'm coming to help them. And then they don't get this experience. Or you're like, we really want you to really stick this out. And then getting that information hanging up, and then we're in a worse situation. And so we try to really handle that personally, but also a little bit separate. We want to keep that kind of isolated there mostly. Yeah. Can parents attend after hearing about homesickness? You're like, how can I come to mitigate that? We don't really have parents attend. The only times we've had that is when we've needed chaperones. We'll have, sometimes it might be a parent then, if the school reaches out to that end to fulfill that need. But otherwise, we really want this experience to be for the kid, to have their own experience with their peers. And a lot of times they get to really have a different growth opportunity when away from home and just with their friends and in a very controlled environment. And so, yeah, no. Can I transport my child to Stone Canyon? Our main answer to that is our preference is they come in on the bus. One, logistically, it is very helpful that they all arrive together, so they get the same experience. A lot of times the bus ride over is pretty awesome as well. The bus driver, I get to talk to the bus drivers too, that a lot of other people don't get that interaction, since part of the high school lead's job is also to unload the luggage. So I'm with them doing that. And they're like, man, they were singing songs the entire trip up. And those bus drivers are having a blast up in that front seat. Letting them listen to that. But yeah, and so getting that full experience, making sure they're there for the orientation where they learn about our 3 R's, they learn about the strike system, they go up to CAV and get those expectations, they get all of that information in. In very rare occurrences, do we make those exceptions, and those are communicated through the teachers in Kelly. How are dietary restrictions handled? So with our family style eating, they'll come in, they all sit down, they told what we're having, and can't have X, Y, and Z and the A, B, and C. Go get the thing you need from our chef, and they'll go up, and they can't have the gluten, they can't have the dairy. They're gonna go up and see our chef and get the food that was prepared to meet their dietary need. As Kelly said, with how many schools are on site at one time, we just have the one school here. On that flip day on a Wednesday, when we have one program leaving, one program arriving, where the bus is dropping off the kids, they go down, we switch out the luggage, and those same buses take the kids leaving a lot of times, and they never see each other, and it's an amazing experience. But yeah, it was just one school at a time. Policy on electronics, they're not allowed, is the simple answer. We want them to be engaged in the activities we're doing, to engage in the nature, just like how in Forest Eco, we want them to not look at their feet and where they're stepping necessarily all the time. We want them to look up and see something that maybe they walked by a ton of times. Back when we were doing outdoor ed, like at schools, because that's what we could only do because we couldn't get busing. It was the paths they took back home, those green spaces. And it was something they walked past 1,000 times. And we were like, oh, this is what this flower is. We want them to engage in that. And so instead, we don't want them to have those electronics to be distractions. A lot of times, we want, sometimes it's phones, so they can contact you if something's going on. One, we don't have service on site. We have a few buildings with Wi-Fi, and we have the district radio, and we have landlines. And that's where our communication happens. And so we want that to happen through those channels. How do you register your students? Kelly, do you want to take this one?
Sure, yeah. So this information will likely, if it hasn't already been sent out to you, it'll be sent out from your school, from your teacher, from the person who does all of our registration. And it's a link to a platform called Active. So basically, if you go to our website, stonecanyonedge.org, find your way over to the outdoor education, click on that. Down at the bottom will be all the schools that are coming this fall. And so you could click on that on your school, and it should take you right to the registration. And again, that is given straight through a link that should come with communication from the school. Oh, what's on the packing list? This is a big one. There's also a packing list loaded on our website to give you a quick basics of it. Your student needs whatever's going to help them be comfortable. So right now, as it's warm, they're going to want sunscreen, a sun hat, sunglasses. They're going to want a really sturdy and good water bottle and a backpack to carry those things in. They also need some good shoes, and not the shoes that they're worried about getting messed up or getting muddy or scuffed. It needs to be shoes they can be out in the world in, and that they can go on longer walks in, and that they're comfortable. That's the other main thing. Some other key things would be a rain jacket or rain poncho, not just a ski jacket, but an actual rain garment that's meant to have the water run right off. So a poncho would be fine, or an actual rain jacket. A little different than like a windbreaker or something that may or may not keep out a lot of rain. Sometimes we have some rainy weather. We did earlier in August, and it was impressive what the kids kept on doing despite the rain. Also, any kind of bedding, toiletries, those kinds of things. We just have basic camp mattresses. So sleeping bags are fine. Pillows, their favorite stuffy, is totally fine and encouraged. I know Ryan mentioned electronics, and this is a good time to also say that any kind of like smartwatch or tablet or something like that, we're going to ask to leave behind. But if they have a favorite book they would like to bring, that's fine. And particularly a good flashlight or good headlamp is important as well. Some good socks, some clothes that they can move around in, both long pants and shorts. And then for the colder months, really emphasizing some heavier gear, some clothing that they can be outside for hours at a time in. So like a fleece, extra layers, really encourage layers of all kinds so that they can change throughout the day as it does warm up. And then a really solid warm jacket or parka. And the other thing I think both of us like to emphasize here is that Stone Canyon is tucked back up in a canyon. And typically when it says it's going to be 40 degrees in Larkspur, it's more like 33 degrees at our site. And that's nice in the summery and hot months. And it's a little bit more to work with when it gets cold outside. So when you check the weather for Larkspur, just know that it'll drop a little bit at camp. Do you want to add anything to that, Ryan?
No, those all sound good.
Okay. I think our last one for now is, how do you handle bedwetting? And this is a pretty popular question as it comes up on occasion for kids, and it's really hard to know what to expect. And so typically we'll ask for the families to send extra undergarments for their kiddo, as well as potentially an extra set of linens, like that could be an extra set of sheets. And what we will do is make sure that the instructor that's in that cabin is aware of it. We'll make sure that they're on the bottom bunk and that they have a spot that's a little closer to the door. And often we'll have them have a quicker wake up time in the morning. So instead of waking them up at 7 when everyone else gets woken up, we might wake them up just 5 or 10 minutes before that. So if they need to, they can go ahead and get in the bathroom and take care of any of those things that are needed. We'll have extra garbage bags if a student wears anything specific for night, like a night guard of some sort. They can, and it's disposable, they can throw that right away, and then we'll take care of that. So there's no concerns about it being a problem with the rest of their peers knowing about it, or for them not having what they need and being comfortable. We also have extra things if students forget, or if they need an extra sleeping bag or an extra pillow. We have a pretty solid stash of those things that we wash anytime they get used. So we often have students that are in that situation of bedwetting, and it's typically not a problem. We just have a good conversation in advance with the instructor and maybe that high school lead that's nearby if they need to know as well, and make a plan for it. And you can also feel free to reach out to me if you have other questions about it. All right. So we have a little bit of apparel. There's some fun shirts that are out right now, sweatshirts. And I would just say to find this, you would go back to our website, stonecanyonedge.org, go to the outdoor education on the right side of the screen, and then head down where you can find apparel at the very bottom of the screen. How it typically works, we don't have like a camp store of any kind. Anything that is purchased has to be purchased online. And then once the students come to camp, those items will be pulled for them and given to them on the first day, so they can go ahead and enjoy them. All right, and then this is my information again. So my number and email address if you need to reach out for anything specific or more questions that have popped up while we've been chatting. There's a ton of information on our website, stonecanyonedge.org. If you go to outdoor education, there's resources for parents, resources for teachers. There's, like we said, the packing list is on there. There's more pictures, there's more information about the classes and what those involve and what the curriculum looks like, although Ryan did a really good job describing them. And then this is some additional information if you find yourself wanting to contact and not remembering exactly who we said to contact. Kim Wolfram is our head chef and kitchen manager. She's the one to contact for any kind of questions about the meals or any dietary concerns or needs. And her information is right here. Amy Paulson is our summer camp coordinator, but she's also our Superstar Wonder registration coordinator during outdoor ed. And so she is the person to reach out to if you have any questions about how to register and using the active platform online. Ryan's also a rock star, but you all know that already. If you have questions about high school lead volunteers, you can reach out to him. And here's his information. And then again, any kind of other questions that don't fall in these categories or any special needs, if your child has any additional needs or concerns or adaptations, those kinds of things, please reach out to me. Email is almost always the best way to reach any of us. Once we have kids on site, we're really focused on them and we're rarely at our desk, which means we're rarely at a phone. So the best advice I can give is to send an email out, and we do get back to them. Do you have anything you want to add, Ryan? Those are thumbs up. Okay. On my end, don't see other questions that have popped up. I see one raised hand. Let me go ahead and stop our sharing here. There we go.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to put any questions in the chat while we're answering things too, we'll work through those as well.
Yeah, I know I just saw one hand get raised. From what I can see, the chat looks like it's open, like you're able to participate and put anything in it. And also, oh, there we go. Perfect. That's easier than hand raising.
Yeah, with the first question, if your kid does not eat meat, our chefs will make a different food for them to meet that dietary need. So like vegetarian stuff, it might be anything from like Beyond Meat, sometimes to replace the sausage or something. Same thing with like non-pork, no pork as well in that situation. But yeah, there'll be a different item supplied to offset the protein that might be in the meat.
See a question about the teachers from the school. Yes, the teachers come as well. It's typically the teachers that work with the students regularly, like their homeroom teacher and other teachers. On occasion, there's other teachers that come. Every now and then it's the PE teacher, or sometimes we have the school counselor or psychologist or social worker that will also attend. But typically, yeah, the teachers that are with the students are also at camp for the entire time. Let's see. In terms of timing, that's a good question for your school, and in terms of what time you get back. In general, buses will leave on, if it's a Monday to Wednesday or a Wednesday to Friday, they will typically leave on a Wednesday or Friday from our camp, usually by 11:15, maybe 11:30. So depending on how far out your school is, it's usually afternoon, early afternoon when the buses get back. But that question would be better answered by your teachers.
To answer the question on do you need to bring a sleeping bag or blankets and pillows, yeah, we have mattresses on the back on that one slide, the kind of like blue covered mattresses on the bunk beds that have like the spring underneath. But yeah, any sleeping bags, whether you want a sleeping bag or sheets and a blanket and that pillow, whatever's going to make your student more comfortable. Of which of those two, but we don't provide sleeping bags and stuff. But if something like an instance, we need to get them a dry sleeping bag in the case of like a bedwetting, or it just didn't get packed, we have extras for those scenarios. And then the breakfast one, I love the food here, and so I would love to talk about that. So Kim either makes, I think this past week we had pancakes. We've had breakfast sandwiches, and then we've had breakfast burritos. Sometimes it's French toast, might be an egg scramble, like scrambled eggs and stuff. And then a lot of times that gets added on like a sausage or something as well, sometimes for those breakfasts.
There's a question about what if my kid does not want to do one of the activities or is scared of doing an activity. So Ryan talked about challenge by choice with the ropes course and our zip line in particular. For the most part, kids get to choose how much they challenge themselves. That doesn't necessarily include skipping a class or sitting out an activity. But for those activities like archery or like high ropes, they do get to choose if they would like to participate. We do ask them to still be engaged and participate as much as they can to that degree. And then in terms of the classes, it's similar, except that no one's really sitting out any activities. We try and get everybody involved. We try and get them engaged and participating. And there may be a couple classes they're not that psyched on, and that's okay too. Let's see.
For the dates of the camp, it will depend on which program we have. I know we have multiple programs on this parent call. So So reach out to your teachers to get those exact dates for your fall camp.
Mhm.
And then the contact number. If you call our main line, you'll get a phone tree, and you'll be able to just leave. If it is during normal business hours, a lot of times our assistant director will be answering that phone line or the main line. Uh, but if we're all pulled away, we get that voicemail even sent to our emails as well, and so we'll get back to them as quickly as possible. Too. So even if we're away from our phone, we get an email, and then we'll get back to you.
Mhm.
And then in addition to that, if there's any type of like emergency situation happening, you can reach out to Douglas County School District Security, and they're able to also contact us via our radio if there's something big happening in the area that you saw on the news or something. That's kind of like a last resort, but that is also available to get in touch with us in those situations.
Yeah, that's a great question. We did have a question a while back about potential fires and what would happen if there was a fire in the area. And because of the district security being on top of that, our district's transportation would be able to send buses to evacuate students in the case of a fire on our property or anywhere near where we just needed to evacuate. This question about checks and balances in place to ensure every child is accounted for. That's a great question. We didn't really touch base on that, but before every activity. So we have 4 activities during the day with a meal in between and transitions between those. There's basically like a roll call that's done. Typically it's the high school lead volunteer. They get to call out every student's name. And even though, we're partway through or all the way through the program and everyone knows everyone else, it's a good practice that is consistent before every single activity. Let's see. Awesome. Just a reminder, if you haven't gotten information from your school, know that will be coming in the upcoming weeks. Typically, some of that information comes out 3 to 4 weeks before the trip. Just be looking for it. You're also welcome to go to our website, stonecanyonedge.org, and go to outdoor education, and there's a ton of information there about what to bring, about the different classes, and then also the registration is down at the bottom where you'll see the name of your school. Here's the website in the chat here, stonecanyonedge.org. And the cost would also refer you back to your school for that. We invoice the school, so they're the ones to check in about the costs. All right. Oh, I see a kitty cat. All right. Thank y'all so much for joining us. We are really excited to have your kiddos come to Outdoor Ed. Please reach out to whomever matches what your question is about. And or as Ryan mentioned, you can also contact us by our main phone number, and there'll be a phone tree to direct you in one direction or another. We are looking forward to having your kiddos come, and thanks for joining.